Hi, this is Gila. I wanted to talk today just a little bit about early Islamic history. Briefly, there is really no evidence from the actual time of Muhammad for the events that are recorded later on. And one of the interesting traditions is that Muslims originally prayed towards Jerusalem, so we are told, for about a couple of years. And then Muhammad changed the direction of prayer to Mecca. The direction of prayer is called the qibla. Now, I'm actually very much into documentaries, especially about history and archaeology. And recently I watched a very interesting one by Dan Gibson. Now, Dan Gibson is an archaeologist who has spent many years investigating the remains of the earliest mosques around the world, including one in China, including various more Arabic areas in Spain and so on. And with the help of modern GPS location, he's discovered that for the first 100 years, all the qiblas were pointing towards Petra. Now, Petra is the famous rose-colored Nabatean city. Nowadays, it's in the south of Jordan. There are amazing structures carved out of rock. The Nabateans were early traders. They were in the middle of the trade routes. It was a rich and amazing city. Unfortunately, it was also prone to earthquakes, and it was largely destroyed, I believe, by an earthquake around the time of Muhammad. Maybe a bit before then, maybe also after then. Anyway, the point is, the qiblas point towards Petra. Then there was a period of confusion. The very first qibla to point towards Mecca was actually in the 8th century, over 100 years after Muhammad's death. Though some still pointed towards Petra, many others pointed to somewhere exactly between Petra and Mecca. And some, these were in the west, in North Africa and Spain, pointed, they were kind of like on a parallel line, if you imagine a parallel line going through Petra to Mecca. They were in the same line. And it was only well on into the 9th century, over 200 years after Muhammad's death, that all the new qiblas pointed towards Mecca. There's a whole business of politics, of civil war in the early Arab Empire, which may have something important to do with us. There's also no evidence that Mecca was important or that it even existed at the time of Muhammad, and it's only mentioned by name once in the Quran. Actually, as an aside, Jerusalem is not mentioned even once in the Quran, though it is mentioned over 600 times in the Jewish Bible, or what Christians call the Old Testament. Anyway, back to Muhammad, all the physical details of where he lived and the places and tribes he interacted with that are mentioned in the Quran don't actually fit with Mecca at all. But they do fit extremely well with Petra. And Dan Gibson goes into a lot of all this in his documentary. So it seems that maybe Muhammad didn't live in Mecca at all, and maybe he was really a Nabatean merchant. And so, therefore, maybe Muslims are all facing the wrong place when praying towards Mecca. Now, maybe that doesn't make a great deal of difference in places, say, like Britain, but it would make a huge difference in Saudi Arabia. Okay, I just thought I would mention that. I found it very interesting. I hope you do too. And as I say, please, if you have the time, have a look at Dan Gibson's really interesting documentary about all this. Thank you so much. All the best to you. Okay, goodbye.